What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video, and today I'm going to be talking about the box office for this weekend, which saw How to Train Your Dragon and The Materialists both open up to really good numbers. How to Train Your Dragon did a phenomenal 83.7 million, and that's just the Sunday estimates. With Father's Day and all that, it's going to go higher, and I've already seen articles and posts saying it's going to be at 85 million, so let's just go ahead and call it what it is. It's going to be $85 million by the time it's all said and done. And that's just incredible for an opening weekend for How to Train Your Dragon, considering the last How to Train Your Dragon film, The Hidden World, the third one that opened back in 2019, opened to about $55 million. So this one being at a whole $30 million ahead of that is phenomenal. It is the biggest opening for any of the How to Train Your Dragon movies, and it is a very good film, and audiences love this movie. It received an A cinema score, which is incredible. It basically means that pretty much everybody liked the film, and it has a stellar 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is just incredible. There's no spinning that. That's insane. The critics gave it a 77% on Rotten Tomatoes. However, I was going through those critic scores, and I would say 95% of the critics that didn't like the film were only saying it was bad because it was a live-action remake. So you can't trust the critics. Ooh, big surprise there. But Materialists also opened up this weekend, and it opened to $12 million, which is just incredible. That's the third biggest opening for A24 in A24's history, and that's just phenomenal for them, considering they've had a lot of troubles lately with their film's quality and box office return. To have a hit like this that is getting good reviews on Rotten Tomatoes and has a big opening like this is a good sign that A24 might be getting back on track, especially after Warfare, because that film was very good. Didn't do as well box office wise, but it was a really good film, so that's what A24 needs to continue to get back to where they were, where it was like they just released a film and it made, $12 million on its opening weekend. And so overall, the box office, it was a great weekend at the box office overall. If we head over to the top 10, you can see How to Train Your Dragon with 83.7. We know it's going to get to 85 million in its first weekend, and that is great. At number 2, we have Lilo and Stitch, which made $15.5 million, down 52%. That's great. It's a great hold, considering How to Train Your Dragon, another live-action remake, being in the marketplace, that the other live-action remake, Lilo and Stitch, would only drop 52% is incredible for it. On its fourth weekend, that film's up to $366 million domestically and over $850 million worldwide. Obviously, number 3, we have The Materialists with $12 million. Again, great opening. And number 4, we have Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning with $10.3 million. A drop of only 31%. That had a lot to do with Father's Day. Clearly, a lot of fathers picked Mission Impossible to go see, the family, and that shows here in the numbers. It's up to $166 million domestically and up over $500 million worldwide. This thing has a massive international box office for Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. It has about a 2.5 split between domestic and international, which basically means that the international is about 2.5 times as high as the domestic numbers are. So you can see that domestically it's still doing well. 166 million is great. But that 500 million with the worldwide numbers is a lot better. It will probably end its run at about, I don't know, can it get to 600? The last one, Mission Impossible 7, made about $570 million overall, so I think it will get past that. But I don't know if it gets to 600. It's going to be really close. It's going to be like 590 to probably, it might get to 600. At number 5, we have some bad news. Ballerina dropped a massive 62%, making only $9.4 million. It's up to $41 million domestically in its second weekend. This is an awful drop, and honestly, it sucks because the movie itself, I think, is really good. I just don't think that people are willing to go see this movie in theaters. I wonder, it makes me wonder if this is going to do well on streaming. I honestly, if I was the head of Lionsgate right now, I am not greenlighting a sequel to this. I know there were talks to already greenlight a sequel to Ballerina. I would not be doing that right now. I think that if this thing had dropped in the high 40s, or sorry, the low 40s, like 42, 41% in that range, or even in the 30% range that it dropped, then I think that you might be considering a sequel. But dropping 62% for a film that already opened pretty low in its first weekend, I would not be at all it should not even be considered that they should be doing a sequel right now until this thing goes out on streaming. Once it's out on streaming, it depends what it does. If it does really well on streaming and a lot of people like it, then maybe we reconsider a sequel. But if this thing just does, average or even below average on streaming like we're seeing in the theaters right now, I would be done. Done with John Wick, done with Ballerina, and just end it there, because it's just not doing well at all. It's not performing well. People are not getting invested in this, even though I think it's a good movie and the people who are seeing it are saying it's really good. And in fact, on the level of some of the other John Wick movies, it's just not performing as well as it should be, I think, at the box office. So it's unfortunate, but I would not be doing a sequel currently at all. No discussion of it until we see some sort of pop on streaming. We're done. No sequel. At number 6, we have Karate Kid Legends with $5.2 million, down 39% to good hold. That film's up to $44 million domestically. At number 7, Final Destination Bloodlines with $4 million, down 38%. Again, a great hold. That film's up to $130 million on domestically. Number 8, we have The Phoenician Scheme, which dropped 51% in its third weekend with $3 million. That film's up to $12 million in its domestic run. At number 9, we have one that expanded wide, The Life of Chuck. This is kind of a new one, but it expanded wide this weekend to the rest of the country, and it did not do well. It only averaged about $2,000 per theater on the per theater average, which is not good. You want to see that a lot higher, especially for a new film like this, with $2.3 million on its opening weekend. Number 10, we have Sinners, which held 46% with $1.5 million on its ninth weekend. The fact that a film like Sinners is still in the top 10, it's barely in the top 10, it'll be kicked out next weekend, but the fact that it's in the top 10 for its ninth weekend in the top 10 is phenomenal. There are very few films that get to say that they were in the top 10 for 9 straight weekends. That's incredible. And this film is up to $275 million domestically, so it is a big success. So that is the top 10 for this weekend. Let's move on to next weekend, where there are 2 big films coming out. We have 28 Years Later and Elio, Pixar's Elio. And for 28 Years Later, these are 2 completely different films, so you're going to get a lot of that counter-programming, similar to kind of like that Barbenheimer thing, but on a totally smaller scale. Elio is currently tracking to open between 27 and 34 million, which I honestly think could go lower, unfortunately. From what I've seen of the seating and the theaters, they're just not selling. Tickets are not selling for this one, but 28 Years Later is the complete opposite story. Most of the big trades are tracking it in the 30s, some tracking it in the low 40s, but Box Office Theory is saying that this thing could get to 50, and that's where I think it's going to be, because the first day pre-sales were ahead of Sinners, which opened to 48, and ahead of Final Destination Bloodlines, which opened to 51. And the buzz for this thing has been incredible. The trailers just were all over the place. They created a lot of buzz. The film looks incredible. I've heard some things about the quality of the film being one of the best horror films ever. And so, take that with a big grain of salt. It's just what I've heard. But if that's true, then you could be looking at kind of a Sinners type thing with this, where it has a pretty good opening and then has an incredible legs like Sinners did. So again, I think that this film is going to open a lot higher than people think it is because of the reviews, the buzz. I just think that this is going to create a Sinners type event, but I think it's going to be bigger than Sinners' opening of 48 million. So I think that Final Destination not Final Destination Bloodlines, 28 years later, I'm going to say opens to about 51.7 million. Like, we're talking right there with Final Destination Bloodlines. I think Final Destination Bloodlines, I called it at 51.6. It did 51.6. So I'm going to say this one does 51.7, just a little bit higher. Because I think you're going to see similar results between those two films, but I think that you're going to see great legs from 28 years later. Especially because there's not really a film that's going to be really challenging it. You know, F1 and Megan 2 come out the next weekend. Megan 2, though, is a more female-centric horror film, where 28 years later is a more male-centric horror film. And F1 is more of an action film. So it's not really, I mean, there's some overlap, but it's not like the same film, the same genre, right? So I think that it could play for a while, and so I think that that's great for it, and I think it's going to have a great legs, great opening. Elio, on the other hand, I'm a little concerned, because I was looking at the ticket sales for this thing, and they're not looking good at all. The only thing that I could think that might happen is that it happened with Inside Out 2, that walk-up business was high because of word of mouth, and reviews were really good for Inside Out 2. The minute the reviews were good for Inside Out 2, the film's ticket sales spiked, and you saw a huge upside in the ticket sales, because I think what you had with Inside Out 2 is you had Pixar had lost a lot of the audience trust. It had made a lot of mediocre films comparatively to the older Pixar films, like pre-COVID Pixar films. Comparatively to those, they had kind of hurt the brand, and so when good reviews, they were kind of waiting, families were waiting for good reviews. The minute good reviews came out, then they were like, all right, let's go see it. So if Elio's really good to the level of Inside Out 2, which I don't think it will be, but it doesn't need to be. It just has to be a really good film. If it can get great reviews and it can be kind of separate from the whole mediocre Pixar movies of the last 5 years, similar to what Inside Out 2 did, you could see it spike, but I don't think that that's going to happen. I'm gonna kind of play it in the middle here, and I'm gonna say that Elio opens to about 33.6. Kind of in the middle of the projections, on the higher end, because I think you could see a spike. But I do think this thing could get to 40 if it has really good reviews, because I think you're going to see a spike there. If it doesn't get good reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, this film's in trouble. I think it's going to go in the 20s. So that's basically what you're getting here. If it gets great reviews, 40s, bad reviews, 20s, mediocre reviews, 30s. That's kind of what this one is going to be. And so that's that. If you guys like this video, make sure you give it a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and comment down below what you think of How to Train Your Dragon. Do you think it's a good movie? What do you guys think of it? And I will see you guys next time.